Hi, and welcome to the CAFMA Connect. I'm your host, Fire Chief Scott Freitag, and with me today, we have the band back together with Assistant Chief John Feddema.
Yes, thank you.
And John, this time it's a little more structured because, well, we have Kathy, and she's like, you have to quit just surprising John with topics.
She did give me a script because normally I didn't have a whole lot of prep time to come in here when you were going to make up whatever we were talking about. Unfortunately, I probably didn't put a whole lot of time into it either, so it's not going to be a whole lot different. I'm sorry.
Well, I think based on the review last week, we should have something to go off of.
I like it.
So last week we had the engineers promotional oral boards and chiefs interviews. And in the chiefs interview, we had a candidate ask us, paraphrasing, what do we do to maintain a positive attitude and motivation throughout our career?
Sure.
And how long have you been in emergency services?
21 in July, full time. And
21.
It was reserved for 2 years before that.
So I've been in 29 years. Personally, I still look forward every morning when I get up to putting my uniform on and coming in and representing the agency and doing the job that I'm blessed to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, somebody was asking the other day. Obviously, for me, I didn't get in the job to be in this position. There was not anything I necessarily even considered that I would ever achieve. But now that I'm in it, somebody asked me the other day, like, what do you even enjoy your job? And yes, I do. I do enjoy my job. But some of it's a perspective. I choose to enjoy my job.
And that's exactly right. And that's one of the things I wrote in the review last week is if you boiled it down to one word as to how we maintain our motivation and positive attitude, it's choice.
Yep.
We choose to remain positive about what we do. And then to break that down further, for me personally, I still remember the passion I had for the career field. Now, granted, I'm not out on the fire engine anymore. I'm not in the ambulance. But I still get to interact. I still get to be part of the fire service. And I think that's what's exciting for me is when I found the fire service and EMS, I found my passion in life. And then the other part for me is just remembering we're here to serve the community. And I enjoy that personally.
Well, and it, I would say, fell into the fire service. Wasn't something I was necessarily looking to get into, but just the way it happened, I started taking classes up by college, and one thing led to another, and pretty soon I'm a reserve, and then pretty soon full time. And anybody that asked me, like, I'm blessed to be in the career that I've been in. I'm blessed to be on the calls. Some of the calls are very difficult, but I also feel blessed to be a part of each and every one of them, even the more difficult ones. And it's because it's made my career. And like you said before, choice. You have to choose to be positive, and maintain that, positive attitude. It's real easy to get negative, which that's the choice also.
Right. So it absolutely is.
It's trying to maintain a positive attitude. And some of that came from even my upbringing. In the mindset that my father helped provide, which is, man, you're blessed to be able to work. So many people don't have the ability to work for various reasons. So feel blessed that you're even able to work. And I feel blessed to have been able to work in the fire service, which again, there's a lot of people that aren't able to do that. So.
I kind of fell into the fire service myself. I was supposed to be going to air traffic control school. Was accepted to air traffic control school because that's what I did in the Air Force. And they shut the school down. And I'm like, okay, well, crap, now what? I have a wife, I have a baby, what am I going to do? And I had done a little bit of volunteer firefighting before that. A buddy of mine had got me into it. My dad got into it and was very involved. And so I called my grandfather because my great-grandfather had been a St. Louis City firefighter for over 30 years. Yeah. And he called the city of St. Louis and said, hey, what does it take? And then he called me back and he said, they told me to tell you not to come work down in the city and to go get your paramedic cert because if you want to get hired in the St. Louis region, you have to be a paramedic. And so that started the path of EMT school and then paramedic school, and I just fell in love with it. And then getting on to the fire department, which was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd look at, I think I've shared this story maybe even in review before, but my dad was very good at manipulating us as young kids. And one of the ways he did that, he used that against us. But we had to be happy, merry workers. And in order to work in the yard or anything, you had to be happy, merry. And part of the reason why was he told us, like, man, work is hard enough to begin with. For you to come in here with your bad attitude and make work more difficult for me, I don't want you out here with me. And you would have thought that it would have been really easy just to to get out of work, just be grumpy about it. But you wanted to work, and because he'd made it up to be something that was very positive. And at the end of the day, we'd look at what we accomplished. And so I've tried to take that even into my career. These days, in the position I'm in, accomplishments are harder to come by.
Right.
Because normally I'm just helping organize the work, but it's still maintain that understanding that, man, when I come into work, sometimes it's hard enough to begin with not to burden people with my bad attitude.
Right.
So it's trying to maintain a choice to come in and be positive and find sometimes a silver lining in very difficult circumstances sometimes.
Well, and for me, I like the fact that when I was on an engine or on an ambulance, I got to make a difference for the individuals who called 911. In my current position, I get to make a difference, although some may not always agree, for all the personnel who work within our agency. And I get to be very involved in the community and the fire service statewide, regionally. And so I feel like I'm still making a difference, just in a different way. But I've enjoyed it. And I wasn't one of those medics that at 2:00 in the morning, when we got the call to go to a house for somebody that had the sniffles, and they had 10 cars in the driveway and 15 people standing around, all of which could drive.
Sure.
And I assume the cars could run. And we're there. And for me, I'm like, okay, well, this is just part of my job. This is what I do. We're never going to fix abuse to the 911 system.
No.
But you take the good with the bad, right? Sometimes you run those calls that aren't the emergency, the drama, the action.
Sure.
But you're still interacting.
Yes. No, and you can make sometimes those situations more difficult by coming in and being frustrated as though you shouldn't be there. There's definitely times we need to create a balance and try to help people understand what abuse looks like in the 911 system. Other times it's just about helping people, because all so often when they don't know what to do, they call 911.
Yeah.
And people don't know what to do in various levels. Some people, it's obviously very extreme. Other people, it's fairly mundane.
Yeah. And
we've all had those examples of those calls where it's like, really, for this? At the same time, we get paid to do the job and to do it well.
And, I remember a call my dad ran on that he shared with me. It was the middle of the night. So he's a volunteer. So he worked full-time at a car dealership. And middle of the night call, he gets there, elderly female. Turns out the call is for her wedding ring that she dropped in a sink, and she didn't know how to get it back. Her husband had passed away, so the wedding ring was very important. And so Dad took the drain apart, got the ring back out for her, and just stayed and talked to her for a little bit. And he said it made all the difference in the world for that person. And I know there's some people out there in the community who complain that we go on those types of calls. The fact of the matter is we're helping. And we're interacting, and sometimes that's what somebody needs. It's just a little bit of interaction.
Well, and like you say, that positive influence. We have so many examples of our own folks doing something similar, where they're helping in some what may seem from the outside like that's not an emergency, but for some folks that's an emergency. And I think the crews do a great job in those circumstances, helping. Whether it's finishing a little project when they haul someone off, or helping clean up, after they're done with the call. There's tons of great examples of this crews going the extra mile to try to have a positive influence on the community and the people that we interact with. Because normally when we're interacting with them, it's on their worst day. And we have to do, and we continue to do, our best to try to make that a little soften the blow of their worst day.
And for me personally, I've had just a blast in this career. And when I think back even on the traumatic calls, I don't think necessarily about the trauma part of it, the traumatic part. Typically, there's something that happened on the call that was like, oh, wow, that was kind of funny. Not that we're laughing at someone else's emergency or situation, but I remember one night, it was late at night on Interstate 70, and a truck had crossed over the center line, hit a tractor trailer head on. The tractor trailer was on one side of the highway. The truck the pickup had landed on the other side of the highway. The driver of the pickup was in front of the semi laying on the highway. So I had to go across the highway, check the vehicle, see if anybody else was in it, come back, work what turned out to be a trauma code. But I remember the only way to get to the hospital from where we were was to go down the on-ramp. And I remember doing CPR in the back and looking up as headlights were coming right for the ambulance, and thinking, this isn't going to be good.
Yep.
Of course, we got around and got to the hospital, and all was fine. But I remember so many details of that call. But I go back to, okay, let's separate from the traumatic part and think back to, I remember that car coming at us.
Yeah.
And focus on that.
Exactly. And I think that's, like you say, it's perspective sometimes, even those difficult calls, because everybody has an example of a difficult call, something that, leaves a little mark on our hearts, a little scar or whatever. But sometimes it's understanding, like you say, looking at some of the perspective related to as well. And I feel, blessed to have been a part of some of the very difficult calls in my career, that I was even able to be a part of them. Because to some degree, if I went through my whole career and it was easy, I would feel a little bit like I wasn't used to maybe the fullest at that point.
Right.
And I feel blessed. There's definitely been calls that have stretched me in different ways where I got to perform.
Right.
And I'm proud to have been able to perform, even though some of those calls were very difficult, and obviously, especially for the person that was involved.
Sure.
So.
I remember when I first got my medical license and I was on the fire department, I ran just some crazy traumatic calls in the first just months. And one of them, though, a gentleman had extracted the morphine from his mom's morphine patches, overdosed. So newer medic, I'm going down because there's vomitus in the throat. So I'm aiming for the air bubbles. Unfortunately, I missed him. I saw the vomit coming back up the tube, so I moved. My company officer did not see the vomit coming back up the tube. So when I moved, it shot him in the face.
Yeah.
I felt really bad about that, and so did he.
Yeah, I bet.
But sorry,
Yeah.
let me reposition, and we ultimately got a code save. I remember working a 72-hour shift. I slept 6 hours over 72, and I went through 3 partners. 2 of them got injured. And one of them, he put a stethoscope around my neck with vomit on it while we were working a cardiac arrest. So we have to carry this patient upstairs. We get to the hospital, and I'm like, where did he go? Well, it turns out he had pulled a groin. So he's in an emergency room bed with ice, icing himself. And so, I want to be helpful, and we have to send workers' comp forms up. And I'd always heard that a picture's worth 1,000 words. And we had Polaroid cameras on the ambos at that time. So I pulled the curtain back, snapped the picture, shut it, attached it to the work comp forms, sent it off to HR.
It seems like you might have been the common denominator of all the trouble for those your partners there. You're the only one left at the end. Like, there's something to be said about.
I was the
maybe you're
one.
the issue.
I was the last one standing, but one got sick and one got hurt, and I mean we were just super busy.
Yeah.
But it was still. I think back on those 72 hours and that 6 hours of sleep, and I'm like, that was the most fun I've had in a 3-day period in my life.
No, that's cool. And I think go back to what we kind of started with as far as like maintaining that positive attitude. I think some of that, we talked about choice, we talked about perspective, but I also think it comes down from being in a healthy place. And I know I think it's the Marines or something like that, as far as having 4 pillars of resiliency, from, mind, body, social, and spiritual, having that balanced approach to all that, I think is important too, so that you're in a healthy mindset. Because you start losing one of those pillars for any reason, whether it's mind, body, just the physical. Obviously, you've gone through a lot of physical challenges over the last, 17 years.
Yeah, something like that.
But all those can affect just the perspective. And we've seen that even for folks here where sometimes just even the mind, they're frustrated about something, whatever it is, and they can't get out of that loop where it's just continual frustration, and it takes something to help them get through that. And I know Debbie Ritterbush from Start Moving On has done a great job
Absolutely.
With that side of it. helping folks navigate even some of the difficulties, not emergency difficulties that people face in the agency.
Right.
And I think that's been a good thing to try to help people get out of that loop where we're just it's a spiral down for even things that may be justified at some point. You have to make a conscious decision to get out of it, though.
Absolutely. And I think part of that is having something outside of work that is an outlet for you, a healthy outlet for you. For me, and we've talked about this multiple times before, I built a shop at my house when we built the house, and that's my go-to. That's where I go after a stressful day at work. When our board member passed away, Jeff Wazowicz, when I finally got home that next night after being up for almost 40 hours, Jen's on the couch. She's like, you need to sit down and go to sleep. And I'm like, nope, I'm going out to the shop for an hour. And I just went out, wrestled with a couple of shocks on the Jeep. And in the end, I could take a deep breath. I felt a little better, and I could sit down and let my mind go and settle. And most people know I have a beer fridge in the shop, but I don't go to the beer fridge in those instances. I go to work on the Jeep, and I stay away from that because it's just not a healthy outlet. So I think that's part of it, is having, I'm going to go do this, or, you know, even if you're having a rough shift, there's something you have to look forward to when you get off.
Yeah. Like you say, it's creating that healthy outlet, which is not using a substance of any kind to check out, but rather find that healthy outlet where you process. I would say at this point, I spend a lot of time at the baseball field coaching little boys.
You do.
And usually every evening I'm out there. And so I get my processing as I go yell at them and tell them to run faster, get down, swing harder, whatever it is. I enjoy that. And it's with my kids are out there, and I enjoy being out there with the other coaches that I get to be with, do a great job. So for me, that is definitely an outlet, a positive outlet, that no matter what goes on at work, I can go, coach those kids and have a great time with the boys and try to develop young boys into young men. And that's fun. I enjoy that.
Well, and you've shared some of that with me, and I think that your approach to coaching the younger kids, the things you've described to me are fantastic, because it really gives them some of those life lessons, things to think about and contemplate. When I look at this career, and I was thinking about it as we're talking here this morning, there's a lot of funny stories from our younger days in the fire service, things that if they came across our desk today, we'd be like, what were you thinking?
No doubt.
And then we just kind of shut the door and oops.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I think that's what helps in my current position to be graceful when those things come across. I know the dumb things that I've done. Yeah. And obviously, the people will continue to do that kind of stuff. So
absolutely,
it's when those come across, being graceful, and go back to like what we try to encourage the team is to win humbly and lose graciously. And I think that's something that even in life you got to figure out how to win humbly and lose graciously.
Right. So just to close it out this week, because we've been given a very tight schedule that we're already going over, just by a little bit, we're good. I think.
Cue the music.
Yeah, cue the music. So I guess in the end, going back to the initial question, closing statement, how do you maintain your positive attitude and commitment to this career?
It's a choice. Make the choice to maintain that positive attitude, and I think I do that through those 4 pillars and maintain those 4 pillars of trying to stay healthy in each one of those.
And for me, it's the same thing. It's choice. It's remembering the passion I have for this career, and it's remembering all the people that I have the opportunity to serve. And I just enjoy that. So with that, we'll close out for this week. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, your attitude is your choice.